Hey everyone, welcome to the Formula Consulting Group. In this video, we're going to dive deeper into step 3 of the formula and show you how to solicit interviews with the top medical residency programs in the country. If you watched our previous overview video, you'll know that soliciting interviews is part of the pre-interview phase of a multi-phase strategy we recommend for matching into top programs. We call this strategy the formula. Before we jump into how to solicit interviews, let's discuss why you should solicit interviews. You should solicit interviews for one simple reason, because the days of submitting your ARIS application online and sitting back in your chair until interviews start rolling in are over. If you take that approach, you will likely fail. Sure, there are always exceptions. Someone always knows someone who reportedly got one interview and still matched into the preferred program somehow. But even if that were true, do you really want to play those odds? The competition for top programs, especially in lifestyle specialties, is fierce and is only growing. If you want to secure interviews with top programs in this competitive landscape, you're going to have to mount a campaign for your candidacy, similar to how politicians run for office. Except instead of campaigning via the media, you're going to have to reach out to programs directly, start a dialogue, and prove to them that not only are you serious about joining their team, but that you are a great fit and a strong value proposition. Now let's discuss how exactly to do this. The best way to reach out to programs and solicit interviews, assuming you have absolutely zero pre-existing connections, is through the use of written correspondence. Not phone calls, not voicemails, but the type of solicitation that leaves a paper trail. And there are 4 types of written correspondence that we're going to review in this video. The first type are cold emails. The second type are follow-up emails. The third type are physical letters delivered by post. And the 4th type are physical letters delivered in person. Let's start with what exactly is a cold email and how to use one successfully. A cold email is simply an email you send to a recipient with whom you've had no prior interaction. The objective of that email is to gain a dual-sided benefit. In your case, to convince your preferred program to grant you an interview. It's called cold because most of these emails go unanswered. But when used strategically, cold emails can be a powerful tool. And there are 4 strategic components that every cold email should contain in order to achieve your desired outcome. The first component is a curated message reflecting your knowledge of the program's features, differentiating qualities, and leadership. The second component is a rationale for why you are an ideal fit for that program. The third component is an official request to interview. And the 4th component are your key attachments, including your personal statement, your non-ARIS CV, your match signature, your LORs, and other application materials where appropriate. If you are a non-US IMG, for example, we recommend that you also include your MSPE. Now, it's also important to understand that these 4 components only ensure that if the recipient actually reads your email, the probability of being granted an interview increases substantially. But it does not, however, do anything to increase the chances that your email is read in the first place. Meaning you have to focus not just on the content of the email, but also on how to convince the recipient to click on your email and actually read it. And in order to do that, there are 2 things you have to do. Number 1 is that you must send the email before interview season begins. That's because when interview season begins, everyone is sending emails to PDs, which bombards their inboxes and forces their assistants and coordinators to filter solicitations to a different folder for later viewing. Not something you want. But if you email them long before your competition does, PDs are much more likely to read and be impressed with and respond to your email. And the second thing you have to do is create a subject line that implies you've been referred to the PD by another doctor. Now you might say, but I don't know any doctors that know this PD. And that's fine. Most people don't. The solution is to use the name of one of your LOR writers, because the act of writing an LOR technically means that that person is referring you to any program you apply to in the future. So let's say, for example, that the name of your LOR writer is Dr. John Smith. Your subject line should read, referred by Dr. John Smith. If you follow these 2 rules, any professional in the field of medicine, and especially in the field of training, would find it very difficult to resist the urge to open this type of email. The second type of written correspondence are follow-up emails. Follow-up emails are simply a second sequential email to your original cold email. But a common mistake among new candidates is that most of them give up after sending their first cold email if they don't receive a response soon after. And that's a shame, because a big secret most people don't know is that follow-up emails are significantly more successful at generating a response than a first cold email. And that's because human nature favors repetition. In fact, more than 55% of responses to cold emails actually come from follow-ups, meaning your first cold email should be viewed more like a prerequisite for a successful follow-up. So, how exactly do you write a strategic follow-up email? A follow-up email follows the same criteria as a cold email, with the exception of 4 differences. Let's go over those 4 differences. Number 1, a follow-up email must be shorter than your original email, and not by omission, but rather by paraphrasing the original message. Number 2, a follow-up email must contain a subject line that specifically reads, follow-up from the month and day of the original cold email. This creates a sense of subtle urgency and motivation for the recipient to reply. Number 3, a follow-up email must include the original cold email in the email thread, meaning your follow-up email should be composed as a forwarding of your original message. This accomplishes 2 things. A, it proves this isn't the first time you've reached out, and B, it allows the recipient to catch up quickly to the email thread and reference your original email. And number 4, although not a difference, but still an important rule, a follow-up email must include the same attachments as the first email. This prevents the recipient from having to sort through old emails to find your materials when they do finally decide to read your email. The third type of written correspondence are physical letters delivered by post, which is exactly what it sounds like. Instead of sending an email, you will type up your message, print it out on paper, put it in an envelope, and send it via the U.S. Postal Service using stamps or a private courier like FedEx or UPS. But there are 5 rules you should follow when sending a physical letter by post to ensure your message is successfully received and actually read by your recipient. Those 5 rules are, number 1, your physical letter should only be sent when programs fail to respond to both your original cold email and multiple follow-up attempts to connect. And that's because only after multiple attempts of no response can you be certain that your message has been intercepted by the coordinator or assistant and filed into a folder for later viewing, or that the PD is simply ignoring and not prioritizing emails from unknown senders. Number 2, your physical letter should consist of the same components as your email, including your matched signature, but without the attachments. You don't include attachments because they take up too much physical space and can distract the recipient from the message, whereas when you send an email, digital attachments are conveniently out of sight and only accessed when necessary. Number 3, your physical letter should use a colored envelope, preferably blue, so that it stands out among the hundreds of white envelopes of junk mail doctors routinely receive. You'd be surprised at how much of a difference this strategy can make. Number 4, when preparing the envelope, print the recipient's name and address using Microsoft Word on a white removable sticker that you can stick onto the envelope. Doing this achieves a professional aesthetic vibe while still retaining a personal touch that seduces the recipient into opening the envelope. And number 5, also pertaining to the envelope, make sure to do the same for the sender information, except in addition to your name and address, include your AAMC number and email address. That way, if your mail does indeed succeed at catching the eye of the PD, and the PD feels you deserve an interview, having your AAMC number on the envelope makes it super easy for him or her to hand it off to his coordinator with instructions to add you to the interview list without having to take extra steps like searching for your application through the ARIS portal. And the easier you make it for the PD to give you an interview, the more likely you are to get an interview. The fourth type of written correspondence are physical letters delivered in person, which is also exactly what it sounds like. Instead of sending your physical letter via the U.S. Postal Service or a private courier like FedEx or UPS, with this option, you are going to hand deliver the letter personally. Though a physical letter delivered in person consists of the same components as a physical letter sent by post, there are 2 key differences in terms of strategy to keep in mind. The first difference is the timing. Delivering a physical letter in person should only be done if all other options have failed, meaning the program has not responded to your original cold email, your multiple follow-up emails, and your physical letter by post. And the second key difference is the delivery strategy. Instead of using whatever generic hospital address you found on the program's website, you will instead show up in person to the hospital or facility, ask for the specific program office at the front desk, and deliver the letter yourself either to the PD, the associate PD, the coordinators, the chief resident, or literally any other person, including a janitor or security guard, who you are confident will ensure that your letter makes it to the PD. Delivering a physical letter in person is the closest thing you have to a guarantee that the recipient has physically received your message. At this point, if they still don't respond to your message, you should probably move on to other programs, because any continued effort with that particular program is likely a sunk cost with no return on your investment. Focusing your energy and time on other programs will likely produce a higher yield. And even if this scenario does play out and you never hear back from that PD or that program, at least you learned something about that program that others haven't. You learned that their program does not have strong leadership or a strong culture, because a PD's job is to represent the program they work for, and that includes responding to candidates who have shown a strong desire and interest in their programs. And a PD who doesn't respond to this level of effort and enthusiasm on a candidate's part is probably not a high-quality PD. Instead, it's probably a PD that doesn't care as much, which is another way of saying that that program is not a top program. And at least now you can cross it off your list. And that concludes this video. If you want to check out our future videos where we deep dive into the remaining steps of the formula, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. If there's a question you'd like us to delve into in the future, please leave a comment below. You can also learn more about our services at www.formulatomatch.com and on Twitter at Formula to Match.